Mr. Chair, if we are needing GIS support, we are waiting for that, I believe. That's still coming over.
Yeah, I think we still got a few more minutes.
Whereas I appreciate my colleague's motion, Mr. Owens, I am terribly disappointed in it, quite frankly. Because, quite frankly, the committee that we served on, the three of us, along with other council members, we spent a whole month going through all the issues and things, and some of the things I can understand people having some disagreements with. We understood that. We understood that the bid was burning when we got in it. But one of the things that was concerning is that I was hoping at the beginning that we wouldn't abort everything that the committee had worked for, and it seems like what we've done, this is not a tweak, this is a major shift. And if that's the case, I have to tell you flat out, I disagree with that. And I think you can understand because the work of the committee has been voided, quite frankly, with this. And it has been voided not based on a lot of facts and information, but I believe that it's been voided on other types of influences. And that's what I wanted to say publicly. Thank you.
Is that on the record or off the record?
On the record. I don't believe.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Are we allowed to, is this set up for us to vote on again? Here?
Yes, but we'll have to raise our hands. This
That's what I
does not,
thought.
this is not a Granicus system, so we'll have to, you can use that as a voting, but I think to be on
Yeah.
the record, everybody needs to
Yeah,
raise their hand, too.
That's where I was going. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And we've got, Chris is here, he's getting set up, so as Chris, give us the high sign when you're ready, and I think they may want to look at some maps, so. And in the meantime, Mr. Chair, if anybody else has anything they'd like to ask about Mr. Owens' motion or anything else, I can do my best to address that while we're getting GIS started.
Yeah, we had Mr. Owens' motion and a second as well.
I do have a question about inclusion of the acreage in Blue Sky. Looking at the map, if you look at 4, 5, and 6, and you see Blue Sky, and Canebrake combining with 4, 5, and 6 to make a single number 4, that number 4 is then adjacent to the urban services boundary, so I don't understand how the acreage would not be included.
Well, Mr. Pohl, the way the advisory committee approached this, that this is the land as it exists now, not as it exists once it's done, because it's not adjacent to the urban service area until the planning commission says so. And that won't,
But that would apply to every other portion of the recommended areas. You could select out a piece and say, well, it's not adjacent, but if it's included in the recommended area, how is it not adjacent?
well, everything that the advisory committee sent you is either adjacent or on a corridor. It's not waiting for another action to make it adjacent or on a corridor. So it meets the criteria as the council directed.
But it's waiting for our action to approve the recommended areas, right?
Yes, everything is outside the urban service area.
Right. And what I'm saying is that if as the motion stands, the area described is a single area, which we would call Area 4, because it would incorporate 4, 5, 6, and the contiguous blue sky area. How is that not adjacent?
We didn't look at these as areas, Mr. Paul. We looked at individual parcels. Individual parcels. That's how all of these were reviewed in their relationship to the council criteria.
Mr. Mickler?
That criteria, though, if I'm not mistaken, is an interpretation by the Growth Management Committee.
It was the criteria that the committee accepted as provided by the council.
We have 4 council members on the committee too. 3 of the council at larges and then 1 extra, so just FYI, if you want to make that makeup. But Mr. Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of points. Jim, in talking to, responding to Mr. Pohl, mentioned that the committee was simply looking at parcels. I believe most every area would be multiple parcels. And with that, I see no difference with looking at Blue Sky Rural Activity Center as a parcel part as adjoining what Mr. Pohl is saying. And our criteria, one, I think it's the committee's, the commission's decision as a whole to make this decision. I very much appreciate all the work that the committee did, but the committee's making a recommendation, and it's up to the commission as a whole to make that decision. And we're talking about council's recommendations and so forth. I'm pretty sure the council's decision that came to us was that properties, the short version of it, to consider properties that are contiguous or have frontage on corridors should be given priority. Not a must, but should be given priority. So, I think that leaves us with a little bit of opening there.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. I think, Mr. George, are you ready? Okay, Mr. Nichols, you want to say anything? Okay.
So, Planning Commission, what would you like for GIS to display that we don't presently have? And Chris will absolutely do his best to get that up there.
Well, we need to see Mr. Owens' changes, his motion.
Okay.
He's got a lot. Mr. Owens, you may.
Is that possible, Chris?
It is, just give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, while he's doing that, just a couple of questions. Can you, Mike, give us the, excuse me, Commissioner Owens, give us the rationale behind eliminating 3 and 1B?
As far as need, for the most part, we've been charged with 2,700 acres minimum, and I'm trying to do what is the best, I feel the best possible allotment for that. Criteria-wise, we keep saying, the council has said, referencing priority and protection of our logo as horse, or our phrase as horse capital of the world. This is prime land and currently being farmed. And if we don't need it at this time, I'm finding acreage elsewhere, simply put. And I'm looking to Blue Sky, which is underdeveloped. And, I think everybody admits to the fact that it needs help. And, my feelings are that the master plan will do that. If the master plan doesn't get there, we have plenty of time for a small area plan ourselves. Everybody has pretty much said anything that we do is going to be 5 or 6 years before, the first shovel hits the ground. I've heard numbers whereas bonding capacity alone is going to be 2029 before there's any bonding capacity. So we've got time for this.
I guess that's part of, kind of my concern a little bit. The mandate was 2,700 to 5,000. So, I don't know, I guess, kind of in my mind is if we're planning for 20 years out, basically, right? Or is that what, yeah. So we're planning 20 years out, then to me, it seems like it makes more sense to just add, and not, to at this point, if we're going to add something else, to add it and not totally disregard the, work that was done previously.
Well, trying to be as proper as I can, these numbers that were given to us as parameters were not based on any fact or data. I've got information that says in the last year, our land absorption was 125 acres. And by the same token, I've got information that says, we still have better than 3,000 acres that's underdeveloped, or not underdeveloped, undeveloped vacant land. We're working on a text amendment right now to increase density throughout the area that if projected out, I believe it would show that we've got the capacity for the housing that we need for the next 25 years.
So, but even given that, there's a process that we will go through when it is time to expand and to limit what our possibilities can be in the future. This is not saying that all this happens tomorrow. So it just seems to limit those possibilities puts us kind of in a stranglehold. So, so what if we're able to build out the 3,000 quicker than what we imagine, let's say, for example, then is another 2,700 going to be enough or not? And, we talk about density and, part of my question is in this area of the country, how dense do we really want to be and hold on to what is special about being a part of Kentucky it's not just the horse farms, it's having a yard, being able to send the kids
yeah.
out to play as opposed to, climbing stairs like we're in New
Yeah,
York City.
I understand that totally. The last expansion 30 years ago was 5,000 acres. We still have better than half of that left, simply put. And as I said, the land absorption the last year was 125 acres. I believe that's probably the way it's been for the last 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, if we're going to do more, I think we need more information. We need more information to really show us what's going on. I would dearly love to see numbers on our text amendment that projects out what may happen if we do that. I would think that would be a prudent thing to look at. We're going through a lot of work. The staff's going through a lot of work on this text amendment, but they haven't projected out any numbers to say that it's going to work. That doesn't seem right to me. I think we should see that. But, we need data-driven information for me to do more.
I'd like to add one piece. I think we need to remember that we've got to, once we've survived this, we've got a whole other job to do, which is design a new process for when we have identified how we identify a need for expansion and how to do that. And we start designing that process as soon as we get this work done. Is that correct? That's the second piece of what's in the goals and objectives.
That's correct.
Not going to wait forever to expand again. If the process is up and we're collecting the data, then sooner rather than later, if we've got a need that's demonstrated, we tackle it.
He's still not ready, Mr. Mickler.
Well, just something to add to Ms. Barksdale's comment, since I seconded this motion. First of all, I think that this map, when it's displayed, shows that a large part of the advisory committee's map is still in place. The large area on Area 2, all of Area 4, all of Area 5, that makes up the majority of the proposed map. So I think their work was still respected. I think I've told people before, as an individual who really prioritizes over and over connectivity, I probably personally would have prioritized more land on the other side of I-64 and I-75, but I do value the work that the committee did in identifying those areas on the other side of the interstate and respecting that. When Area 3, when I looked over the committee's work, I really feel strongly that it doesn't make sense in the way it did when the north side of Winchester Road was included in an earlier draft. By sort of being isolated by Greenbrier and by areas outside of the urban service area on 3 other sides, we really minimize the opportunity or the opportunities in the type of development that I think our comprehensive plan calls for is unlikely to be favorable there, where I think the type of development and the intensification and the reuse and more conscious, purposeful use of space is more purposeful, or is more possible at the intersection of the blue sky. So I think that switch is a small part of the plan, whereas the majority is still from the urban growth management, but that switch actually puts this more in alignment with the comprehensive plan's other goals and objectives related to primarily connectivity and sustainability.
Mr. Owens, I got just a question. Where did you get that, that data about the absorption of land? You said it was 125 acres
It was
a year?
PBA office.
PBA, just to make sure you get
Yeah.
them. Thank you.
I'd like to make another point, and that is that prior to the council's decision, we and the staff were involved in a very careful, very thorough analysis of how to proceed on this issue. And what we're doing here today is going to be setting a precedent for how we continue to proceed on issues like this. And thorough analysis and great care is what's called for in a situation like this. And so including acreage, especially prime farmland acreage in our decisions, it's not cautious, it's dangerous. And I think, and one thing I'd like to point out is that we've gotten numerous correspondences from the Rural Land Management Board about preserving prime farmland, and it's never even been mentioned in our discussions, and I think it's something that we should have been paying more attention to. And as you look at the areas that Mr. Owens is suggesting we not approve at this point, it's prime farmland. So I'm supportive of his motion.
Well, thank you. We'll hopefully get to that point once Mr. George get ready. Mike, I guess your stuff was pretty complicated, man. Are you ready? Okay. All right.
How do you want to go about
Chris,
doing
can
this?
you give us a
Yeah.
tour of what you've proposed, what you've got here?
Say it. I will try.
Can you blow
We
it
did-
up?
Can everybody hear me? Yep. I took the areas that you recommended. I joined them together. I calculated both the gross and the net acreage. Includes the area 1B at the top here. 1B, all of area 2, all of area 4, all of area 5, the Canebrake road properties. They were on the one map as 5B. All of Blue Sky. I'll zoom in there a little bit. And then what was area 6? And we're seeing so I calculated both the gross acreage and net acreage. And I'm looking at your notes. The gross acreage was 2,832 acres. The net acreage was 2,639 acres.
So we were pretty close.
Okay.
If we're sticking with gross acreage, which is what they've all.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask that question. Mr. Duncan, did we,
Netted out.
it's net acreage that we went to? Because that's what, for the group, we went with net acres.
So for the planning commission, to refresh on that, the advisory committee decided that they would exclude floodplain and publicly owned land from their recommendation to you. So that's what the difference in net and gross is. So the gross was the total from line to line, and then any parcels that had floodplain or publicly owned land, which would include city land, and in this case it was city-owned land and Fayette County Public Schools, those were excluded as well as the floodplain. So that was the difference. And then the committee decided that they would recommend to you no less than 2,700 acres net to ensure that everything that was being recommended to the Planning Commission would be developable land, as we don't develop in the floodplain, and we don't expect publicly owned land to be available for private development.
Okay. With that being said,
Mr. Chair,
70 acres there.
about 70 acres.
Mr. Chair, if I'll go back. The council's recommendation or request to us was simply one number, not gross and net. It's just simply one number. So that's what I'm going with.
Historically, with every expansion in the past, was there a discussion of gross versus net, or is this the first time? And again, that discussion, from what I understand, didn't even occur at council level.
No, the council did not direct gross or net. That was done by the advisory committee, which, as Mr. Forrester has pointed out, included 4 members of the Urban County Council. But they participated and endorsed the committee's direction to do that. I don't know, Mr. Davis, whether they did that in the past. I don't believe that in the past there was a direction to expand by a specific number, so there would have been no reason to break that out.
Thank you. When you have something that not everybody's perfectly happy with, but I think achieves what has been asked with it, achieved what's been asked by us, I'm inclined to support Mr. Owens' motion after hearing that acreage amount.
I just got one question. And I'm gonna ask my fellow committee members. If we're just doing the gross, we would have solved a lot of problems early on. So now I'm just conflicted now because we're different from the group. You guys and ladies wasn't on the committee, which is fine, but they had us charged to do net, and that's why I asked the question. Mr. Owens, nothing against it. I just want to make sure because we were going by net the entire time.
Yeah.
So is this a legal question, Mr. Duncan, or?
I don't think so. I mean, the law never shies away from weighing in if they want to anyway, but the council did not differentiate between net and gross. It was the committee's choice to do that.
All right, great. So we have a motion by Mr. Owens. We have a second by Mr. Mickler. Do we have any further discussions to that motion?
I do have one other question. With the fact that you've already got businesses in the Blue Sky Parkway, how does that work its way out? I mean, it looks like a nice contiguous piece of land. However, you've got businesses that have been there for, many, many years. And so how do you resolve that? And is that land something that you could, is there enough there to also build residences or, what's the thought there? Or am I ahead of myself?
I see this as an area where you can live and work. When I see this beard on the, down here on this, this seems like an area that's ripe for what we've been talking about, to live where you work, where you don't have to, travel great distances to get to your job. With the connectivity that Mr. Mickler has been, advocating for, it's an area that to me has a lot of potential, for homes, for jobs and work.
If I may add to it, Ms. Barksdale, yes, there are businesses out there. I would say most of the land is underutilized. If you look at an aerial, I mean, there's a lot of open space there. But then by the same token, what we're doing, almost every piece of land you could put that to. We're talking about farmland. That's a business. We're going to change that. You've got houses in various areas that may be subject to redevelopment. So everything we're looking at and considering, I would say would fall in line with what you're thinking as far as Blue Sky Parkway, Blue Sky Rural Activity Center. And I think it's, again, prime land for redevelopment.
But on the other areas, we kind of, I think, know whether the owners of those properties are willing to be developed. Do we have any information to support the same with Blue Sky?
I don't know that, if you look at the parcels, areas, there's multiple parcels in each area. I mean, I don't know that each landowner's been asked.
I guess that's maybe it's a question for
I mean,
the committee.
you got, that's,
I don't know, the question on the answer to being asked, maybe not, right? We got emails and documents that I think all of us have received from
Yeah.
owners that we assume wanted to be in, they actually came out.
yeah.
And there's some here that may want to be in, as well. So there was, that part was difficult, but what we did do, excuse me, I just want to
No,
make
go
sure we
ahead.
said, that part was difficult. What Vice Mayor Wu wanted, though, he wanted land that was ready. He didn't want land that was going to sit and wait. That was one of his statements. He said, if I need to make sure, are we sure XYZ owner is going to, so those owners that came to the meetings stated, hey, we are ready. So those owners was given a little more priority, right? Because they said it was ready because of the notion that you mentioned, Mr. Owens, about land being sitting and just being idle last time we did it. So again, that's what we did. It has nothing to do with what we're doing now as a commission. I just want to make sure that everybody understands it because, again, the commission and the committee are two different groups of people. So it doesn't matter. You got a motion, we got a second, and I'm going to take the vote unless we got further discussion. Mr. Nickel?
I guess I have a comment on this before we get to the vote. I think we're in a dangerous situation trying to rewrite the work that's been done by the UGM. I agree with Mrs. Barksdale that if we do anything, it should be adding property to the UGM's recommendation of the minimum. We need to understand that. It was from 2,700 to 5,000, and what we're doing now is rewriting the map in order to get the minimum in the way that is most appropriate to the motion. I think that this shows a worldview or a Lexingtonian view of scarcity. I think with scarcity, it's good for those that have ownership because they can, because of the high demand, they can expect a constant return. I think that it's not good for those that need to be provided urban services that are not property owners. And anything less than the minimum, I believe, shows a worldview of scarcity. And once again, this scarcity protects those that are in power and is not going to provide the housing that we need. So I'm an advocate for us. Whatever parcels can be added to what's been recommended by the UGM in an appropriate way. And working around the minimum is disconcerting to me, and I don't think it solves any problems. So that's my comment on all of this. And I hope we all see that with understanding that there's abundance for all, that we can provide some of the needs to those that are most in need in our community.
Okay, so just restate that. So we have the motion. We don't have any additional questions or discussion. Anyone want to amend the motion? If not, we're going to take a vote. So all in favor, please raise your right hand to the motion that's on the floor. Okay. All right. So we got 6. The opposed is 4.
And Mr. Chair, it's not enough just to have the number. We need to know. So Mr. Forrester, Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Wilson, Ms. Barksdale.
Judy, you,
Wait, no, I'm sorry. Which one are we counting?
No.
No,
Put your
okay,
hand
sorry,
down.
no.
Mr. Forrester, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Barksdale, and Mr.
Miss,
Nickel.
no,
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Barksdale.
I'm
Whoa,
sorry.
whoa,
Madam,
whoa,
Madam,
man.
Mrs., Miss,
Don't do that, Jim.
the lovely lady, Ms. Barksdale, and Mr. Nickel vote no, and then the balance of the planning commission votes yes. So that would be 6 yes and 4 no.
And I'm going to say, although, you know, I was part of the other group, what is important to me about what we've done here has to do with the connectivity. I mean, I think if we were planning from scratch and not trying to meet the constraints that we were given, it would make a lot more sense to do this anyway. And so if we have the opportunity to do it, I think we.
Mr. Ferg,
I'll let my parliamentarian chime in. Mr. Wilson?
Well, you've already had a motion to do what is necessary. What you're now asking is there a motion to include more? Yes. Yeah, if the chair would like to accept it.
We can.
I mean,
Mr. Nickel?
All right. I would like to make a motion to include all the land recommended by the UGM and make a motion for that approval, including the 1C that was recommended as the vice mayor's compromise. So it's a motion. If it gets a second, if it gets a second, I'd love it.
Yep. We're gonna,
ask him to clarify that.
Yes.
he's
Oh,
asking.
He's saying to do what now?
Any of the property that was in the UGM that has been excluded to be re-included and for 1C to be added, and we should have a nice increase in total acreage to provide for all of our citizens.
So you understand it, Mr. Wilson?
I do, except the only question I would have is, I don't know what the number would be.
No, we're not gonna vote yet. We need to see it on the map like we did with Mr. Owens. So we give Chris time to look at it. So,
We need a second.
yes. So do we have a motion and a second on that? And that's basically,
So, Mr. Chair,
wait. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to say, we can, Chris doesn't need to calculate this. We've got the calculation,
do.
so we can show these maps if you'd like to see them.
Yes.
We've got the calculations for them. Chris, can we switch me back to? So part of Mr. Nichols' motion includes adding area 1C and 1A. 1A would represent what the advisory committee recommended, along with 1B. And then 1C was not recommended by the advisory committee. Area 1A is 230 acres, and Area 1C is 290 acres. And then, Mr. Nickel, did you want Area 3 also, that was part of the original? This, yes, this as well?
Yes, what was recommended by the UGM.
So this shows it in two parts, but the committee recommended both 3A and B3B together, 258 acres for A, 310 acres for B. I am not keeping a tally. Who is? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Area 3 was a total of 568. So those two together are 568.
$1,088 additional to the recommendation from the Urban Growth Committee. Right?
Gross.
It's gross.
roughly 3,900 acres, I believe, total.
Well, we're not concerned about net and gross. See, that's what had me confused. So right now, we as a commission are not concerned about net or gross. That's the way I'm going. Everybody's shaking their head, so I'm going that way too. All right. So we have a motion and a second by Ms. Barksdale. Hold on. Okay.
And before, I'm sorry, the technical, because we are broadcasting on YouTube, we've been asked to remind everyone to turn your mic on when you speak, and please don't speak when somebody else is speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So all in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your right hand. I did that one. Okay, so it's Nickel, Barksdale, Forrester, because we voted on that before. Okay, Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One other thing, I don't know if you deem it housekeeping or not, but considering that we've got Blue Sky Rural Activity Center in the discussion now, I did have a conversation with our legal. If this does get brought into the urban service area, obviously it is no longer a rural activity center. And I would like to have a recommendation to go along with this, that removal of that designation as Blue Sky being a rural activity center. I'd like for that to be removed, if that makes sense. Because it's no longer a rural activity center. We shouldn't deem it as that if it's not.
In the rural area.
Yeah.
Legal?
I did have a conversation with Commissioner Owens, but he might have interpreted what I said a little bit different. What I told him was that you all are not designating how the uses will be in the land today. You are identifying the land to be included in the master plan. So if you include Blue Sky, which you have now, then you will be, that will be incorporated into the master plan. And so the master plan, you can ask the master planning process and the consultant to look at that, and they will, because you've included it now, as to how the uses should be designated. But I don't think today here you can ask them to remove or not remove the current designation, because that's the purpose of the master planning. I mean, at the end of the master plan, they may say, this is no longer a rural activity center. These uses should be designated appropriately in this area that you've identified. But you can't do that today, because you're not making a decision today about the uses on the land. Your decision today is to accept land and move it forward for purposes of master planning, so that the master planning process can identify in the areas you've designated what the proper uses should be, what the considerations should be, and all those other things. So what I told Mr. Owen was, if you want to make it a point to tell the in part of the master plan, let's consider what to do with that. I think they're going to do that anyway. You can, but you can't designate to them today what to do with that.
So my motion can be, make it a point to, or?
Since you all have now voted to make that land part of what you're recommending for purposes of master planning, they're going to,
Okay.
I'm assuming, I mean, that's what they're tasked with doing. They're going to consider what are the proper uses in all the areas you've now identified.
Okay.
So, Mr. Owen, you want to pull that motion from the floor?
I can pull that motion from the floor.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Duncan, looks like we've got a roadmap to go to the consultants. It goes to somebody.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, well, I want to say thank you, because as from the commissioner's standpoint, I know it was a lot of information you had to take down pretty fast, the fire hose, what we like to call it. But as I think one of the commissioners mentioned, that every decision is this decision is a hard decision for Lexington, but the one thing I do like about this commission is that we all agree with each other on our differences. And it doesn't matter, we get back and like Mike and Bill's supposedly going to have a drink, make sure Bill pays.
Oh, no.
No, it's my turn.
But the thing is, I think that shows, a lot of cohesiveness between the community. So, if I had to say anything, I do appreciate that. It doesn't matter about a win or a loss. It matters about how well we come together. So I just want to say thank you for everything. Yep.
Mr. Chair, we also have a resolution, I think that will memorialize the work that you all have done today. So if you all would be interested in entertaining that, then we could advance this to the steering committee, to the advisory. To somebody.
You want to do this? Go ahead. Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I wanted to say that I'm very grateful to you for being leading these meetings. I was elected vice chair, and I had to chair a meeting the very next week. And so after a few of those, I have a renewed appreciation for what you do. Thank you.
Listen, man, I love you. Yeah. So, Mr. Duncan, we just need to take a motion for the resolution.
Yes, if you all would take that, if you would,
I have one right here.
Should it be read? Yeah.
What is that? Go ahead.
I think it would be good.
No,
There
no,
are
give it to
two blanks on there, so one would be that both of them are today's date, which is October 26th. And then the resolution references Exhibit A, I believe, which, as based on your vote, would be this map that we have before you. So this will be turned into a map as Exhibit A, and then that will be what is referenced in here.
You want to read it, or?
No, you all would do that.
No, Ms. Worth, she's going to read the
Oh, I
resolution.
thought she said, I thought she asked me if I was going to read it. I'm
No,
sorry.
Ms. Worth is going to
Do
read.
you want to read it?
I do not, but I would like for you all to do it. I'd like for somebody to
Ms.
read
Worth,
it.
All
she's
right.
taking the,
Resolution of the Urban County Planning Commission 2023, a resolution accepting growth areas for purposes of master planning. Whereas the Urban County Planning Commission at its October 26th, 2023 meeting considered recommendations from the Growth Management Advisory Committee for growth areas only for purposes of creating a master plan as set forth in the goals and objectives for the 2023 Comprehensive Plan, Imagine Lexington 2045, and whereas at a meeting held on October 26, 2023, the Planning Commission accepted the growth areas as identified on attached Exhibit A, which will be utilized only for the purposes of master planning, with a final decision to be made at the time the master plan is considered as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, Imagine Lexington 2045, which will be on or around November 2024. The areas identified on Exhibit A are only accepted for purposes of master planning, and any land identified therein shall not be available for any development until such time as the master plan is adopted as an amendment to the comprehensive plan by the Planning Commission or later. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Commission of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Government, Section 1, that the growth areas as identified on Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein are hereby accepted only for the purposes of master planning, with a final decision to be made at the time the master plan is considered as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, Imagine Lexington 2045, on or around November 2024. Section 2, that this resolution shall become effective on the date of its passage. Passed Urban County Planning Commission, its chair, Planning Commission signature, and attested by the secretary of the Planning Commission.
Okay, you still need a second.
I haven't said anything.
I'm sorry.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Yep.
Aye. Any opposed? One.
All right, Mr. Chair, that motion, Mr. Nickel was the only person to vote no against that. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
all right.
Okay, so with that being said, this meeting is adjourned at 6:50, so that's not too bad. Everybody have a good weekend.